Let's discuss Jodie's former club Chelsea now. After what's been a difficult couple of weeks on and off the pitch for head coach Liam Rosenior. Look, Chelsea hosted Manchester City on Super Sunday. They're not going to have Enzo Fernández after he was dropped following comments about his future during the international break. What did you make of this whole situation? Look, Enzo's agent is not happy with Chelsea's decision. Did they do the right thing in punishing him?
I'm not too sure. I found it baffling that one player in Enzo was being banned for 2 games, and another player in Cucurella nothing was happening. I felt it was tough listening to Liam having to explain what was going on, because I think from the outside, like I said, it's either 2 in the same boat, especially when you actually weigh up the wording of maybe what was said on the international break. Granted, there may have been maybe 2 separate incidents to do with Enzo, where he first mentioned after a Chelsea game that he wasn't sure what was going to be happening with his future. I just found it baffling that one person was going to be banned for a couple of games and then one's not getting it. So, difficult period for the club, not just the 4 defeats in a row before Port Vale, but obviously difficult when you're having to answer questions regarding players talking about regimes or projects and how they maybe find it difficult to understand why they changed the manager and stuff like that. They're just certain things that as a manager or a head coach that you don't need to be answering it, particularly when you're going through a spell like they have been going through on the pitch. And
also the fact that Cucurella and Fernandez, of course, are both senior players as well, so that makes it more of an issue.
Yeah, and in fairness, it was what annoyed me the most, is like if you was a 17, 18-year-old going away on international duty and maybe not realising that the minute you say something in your home country could all of a sudden relay itself back. But I don't even think that 17 or 18-year-olds in today's climate with all the media training would be making those mistakes, which made me then think it was kind of said on purpose to maybe create a little bit of noise. But as I said, I'm still not sure about the banning of a player for 2 games, but you do expect better from those 2 players, because in fairness to them, over the last year, they've been 2 of the better players and 2 of the better performing players at the club. So that maybe makes it that little bit more disappointing from the club's perspective. Now, you will find some fans that actually agree with kind of the notion or the kind of reasoning behind what they're saying. So I think some of the fans and some of the ownership would maybe differ in how they see things being said, but that's the type of thing that you get at a top club.
I think that the slight difference in the position with Enzo Fernández and Cucurella, within those interviews and news conferences that were done on international duty, Cucurella did reaffirm his commitment to playing for Chelsea, and I don't think that was the position really stated by Enzo Fernández at all. And look, when players go away on international duty, there's kind of an unwritten rule between clubs and international federations that you're not really supposed to talk about things that have happened in your club. That's not going to stop journalists going and asking them. But then once Enzo Fernández was asked once and he didn't give the best answer from a Chelsea perspective, he then went on and did a couple of other interviews. Now, as journalists, you're going to latch onto what he said in the first interview and ask again. So in that respect, it was up to the Argentinian FA to say, we're not going to talk about that again. And obviously that's not happened, which has left people at Chelsea quite disappointed. So I think there was a slight difference also in the way both players reacted afterwards. I think Cucurella has kind of gone to Liam Rosenior and said that he will do things differently next time around, whereas Enzo Fernández, as you already mentioned, his representative has come out and called the punishment unfair. He's also gone on record saying we're not going to talk about a new contract until after the World Cup. So there has been slight differences in the way both players have reacted after all these interviews on international duty.
You'd expect your agent to stick up for you and be on the side of their actual client. And we also don't know how those conversations went once back at the football club, because you never know, it could be Cucurella's, like you said, Dave, holding his hands up saying, oh, look, I maybe shouldn't have done that. And Enzo's maybe sticking to his guns. So those type of in-house meetings can then veer off very quickly and maybe change things. But
that's a side issue that really he doesn't need, Liam Rosenior.
Yeah, but also it's another reason why I don't get the 2-game ban, because if you're saying that you want someone to commit to the club, or you want them to what's going to happen after the 2 games that he's just been banned for? Is he going to be more on board? Like, do you know what I mean? I just find the banning of a player, fine him or maybe whatever, but leaving him out of a team for 2 games, I find that strange.
And such a big one on Super Sunday as well. Well, Rosenior certainly wants to put his stamp on being head coach, doesn't he? What have you made of him so far at the club?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's had some unfair criticism, particularly early when there's absolutely no substance behind some of the silly little memes and stuff that were coming out on social media. But it's the type of place it is at the moment. But there's certainly been good results at the beginning when he first took over, and I actually felt the performances didn't really change much from Maresca's time at the club. I felt that we was looking like one team one half and another the next, and the consistency levels never really got any better, albeit the results I feel were coming in thick and fast. And the only problem you get now is that the minute we start going on a losing run and we then look back at the teams that we have lost against, anyone with like a half decent team, no disrespect to the others, and also some of the games we did win where we didn't deserve to be winning. But yeah, I just think a lot of the criticism that Liam's received regarding the stuff that has got nothing to do with football, I think is pathetic.
It feels like, just going back to the 2-game ban, is Rosenior sort of putting his authority in there and putting his foot down?
Yeah, maybe. And like I said, it's hard to make a guess at. You never know what's kind of being said behind closed doors. But me personally, I just don't see a 2-game ban laying down any type of authority anyway, other than going, well, are we going to annoy the player more? Are we going to weaken our team when we need to get a result against the Man City team? But Liam will have his reasons, or the club. I think they all come to the decision collectively, didn't they? So you never know. Liam might have been leaning towards not a 2-game ban, but it's kind of been agreed.
With your coaching hat on, what would you do in that situation? You know, if your players are speaking out like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly wouldn't be happy about it, because particularly like we've said already, it's come from experienced players. But again, I wouldn't know how I would react until I was sat in front of them and hearing their explanation or whatever the circumstances were. But you'd certainly be disappointed in the pair of them.
Mm.
I think Chelsea's position on Fernandez is that he's not for sale. They spent over £100 million on him, and he is one of, as you've mentioned already, one of the more experienced players. And actually, from a Chelsea perspective, they would kind of like to build the team around the more experienced players and have the younger players kind of fill out that squad. So I think from Chelsea's perspective, he's not for sale. But I know our chief reporter, Carve Solakala, said that within Chelsea, Fernandez isn't regarded as one of the untouchable players, say like, for example, a Cole Palmer or an Estevao. So in terms of Chelsea's position, they hold the cards with his contract. He's got a long time left on his contract. Cole Palmer, Estevao have got the longest length of deals left, June 2033, and I'll be about 65 years old, I think, in June. I can't even comprehend how far away that is. But Cole Palmer and Estevao all have got 33. So's João Pedro, so's Mamadou Sarr, Dario Sugo, and then comes Enzo Fernández, Reece James, Garnacho, Gittins and Hato. So in terms of length of contracts, Chelsea have all the cards, and they would want certainly a return on what the book value says for Fernandez, which means they're only going to contemplate an offer of over £100 million. Can Real Madrid really offer that this coming summer?
In terms of the ownership, you've been at Chelsea in different capacities under different ownership. So Ken Bates, Roman Abramovich, and now Blueco. How different is it now? What would you say?
Well, for starters, it's extremely different when you're talking about you've maybe got 2 sporting directors and you've got head of recruitments and stuff like that, compared to Ken Bates' days when you had like a CEO and maybe a general manager. But I don't think the jump is too dissimilar to when towards the latter stages of Roman Abramovich's era. All I would say is that the buying policy and the recruitment policy certainly is. There's a big gap between Roman and the Blueco's ownership, because obviously the fact that we hear that they only want to buy young players and they want to maybe look to earn some money and sell them on, and even just from a fan's perspective, watching from the outside, so I don't know what goes on inside the club now because I've not been there. Yes, I have friends that still work at the club, but without being in it, you don't really know. But from a fan's perspective, from the outside, we want them to build a team that can challenge and a team that is kind of maybe set up in certain areas to go and compete in Champions Leagues or compete for the league. And it looks like that all this buying young players that maybe are not ready to go in and perform at that level. Us as fans are probably looking at it going, well, how are we ever going to get to the next level if we keep getting rid of someone and then bringing the next person in that is maybe not too much better? But for instance, we're talking about goalkeepers earlier. I was like, well, when Donnarumma's coming up, why are we not going for him? He's 26 and he's a goalkeeper. Those are the questions that Chelsea fans are asking. And even like when we're talking about the money that we've shelled out, they're not shy to putting a hand in their pocket. But for me, it's the return on the investment that I worry about. Going, well, are we going to get over 100 million for Enzo Fernández? Are we going to get that from Moises Caicedo again? Like, I don't see it. I worry about where we're going to be from a financial aspect if, I don't know, we haven't got women's teams or car parks to sell anymore. Do you know what I mean?
What do you think is a good season for Chelsea then this season? Where do they, what would be a good season for you?
I think Champions League football is a must because we all thought and fair play to the team and Maresca in the Club World Cup, because what we've done to PSG in the final, for me, it's the best Chelsea performance in a final that I've seen. But once we saw that, the hopes started growing and the anticipation of where we can maybe get to started growing. And now it just looks like that we haven't quite fulfilled what we thought our potential was going to be maybe showing this year. But it's still within our hands. We can still qualify for the Champions League. And I think that needs to be a must for the football club.
The Premier League show's recent segment on Enzo Fernández, his comments about seeing himself living in Madrid, and the subsequent debate over Liam Rosenier's handling of the club's two-match ban sparked an animated conversation that cut across footballing lines: identity and aspiration, loyalty and professionalism, player autonomy and club governance. The exchange was equal parts human story and institutional drama, with social media and punditry serving as a chorus that magnified the stakes. Below is a considered, richly textured account of that debate, what was said, why it mattered, and what it reveals about modern football. A player's dream or a headline's provocation? Enzo Fernández's remark that he could see himself living in Madrid is the kind of soundbite that can be read in two fundamentally different ways. On the one hand, it is a plainly human statement about lifestyle, culture, and personal preference. Madrid is a beautiful city with rich culture, great weather, and a footballing history that many players admire. Young South American players, in particular, have long been drawn to Spain. The language, continental proximity, and a style of football that rewards technique make La Liga an obvious magnet. On the other hand, such a comment, when made by a player who is currently contracted to another club, will inevitably be parsed for intent, loyalty, and future transfer whispers. Football fans and journalists know how to connect the dots. A casual reference to Madrid can become a signal: interest in a transfer, admiration for a rival, or simply an offhand expression that the media then turns into a story. It's a familiar spiral. Private thought becomes public headline, and headline becomes a narrative that can affect locker room morale and fan sentiment. What the Premier League show emphasized, and rightly so, was context. Fernandez's words were not delivered as part of an official transfer statement or a flirtatious message to Real Madrid's hierarchy. He was talking about a city he liked. But players are not islands. Their utterances travel fast and can be weaponized by agents, newspapers, and opposing fans. The show's presenters highlighted how, in an ever-hypersensitive era, even the most innocuous comment can have consequences, particularly when club stability and supporter trust are at stake. Liam Rosenier's dilemma: discipline, precedent, and the modern manager. That segued into a debate many found more consequential. Did Liam Rosenior manage the situation properly when the club imposed a 2-match ban on Fernández? Here, the conversation splintered along predictable lines. On one side were advocates for firm, early discipline. Their argument is simple and rooted in managerial pragmatism. When a player makes comments that could destabilize the dressing room or alienate supporters, swift action by the manager and club sends a clear message. It reasserts authority, underscores collective values, and reduces the likelihood of recurrent behavior. A 2-match ban is substantial enough to signal seriousness, but measured enough to avoid irreversible damage to a valuable asset. From this vantage point, Rosenier's decision was decisive and proportionate: protect the team, maintain standards, and allow the players space to reflect without the constant glare of matchday scrutiny. Those who supported Rosenier's course also referenced the broader managerial toolkit. Discipline need not be purely punitive, it can be reparative. A short ban can be coupled with meetings, media training, community engagements, and a chance for the player to publicly reaffirm their commitment. This pathway protects the club's authority while allowing a return without lasting resentment. In a squad-based game where unity matters as much as tactics, restoring cohesion can be more important than punishing a single indiscretion. Conversely, critics argued that the 2-match ban was heavy-handed, possibly counterproductive, and an overreaction to what might have been an inadvertent remark. Footballers are human. They think aloud, make cultural comparisons, and are sometimes misunderstood. A strong managerial reaction to a private comment, critics said, risks stifling player expression and creating resentment. It can inflame media narratives of discontent and make the player feel unfairly targeted, particularly if there is no evidence of active transfer negotiations or malicious intent. Some commentators suggested alternative responses Rosenior could have adopted: a private conversation between manager and player, a mediated apology or clarification, or a lighter internal sanction, such as a fine or temporary training exclusion. The logic here is restorative: correct the course discreetly and preserve public unity. This approach leans on trust building and the view that football clubs are also workplaces where issues should be resolved internally unless persistent or escalatory. The wider implications: culture, power, and the game's new publicness. Beyond the immediate facts of the 2-match ban, the Premier League show's discussion tapped into deeper themes: who owns a player's identity, how clubs exercise control, and how media ecosystems shape reputations. Players today navigate an unprecedented level of scrutiny. Social media, punditry, and real-time commentary mean that minor slips can balloon into reputational crises. Clubs are consequently more vigilant. They must act both to protect the team and to manage their public image. Managers like Rosenior therefore walk a tightrope. They need to show they will not tolerate behavior that threatens team cohesion while avoiding appearing authoritarian or unsympathetic. Power dynamics are at play too. A manager's decision to sanction a high-profile player is a statement of where authority lies. If coaches routinely hesitate to discipline stars, it can create a hierarchy where talent buys impunity. Conversely, excessive harshness risks alienating the dressing room and eroding trust. The Premier League show's panel acknowledged that managers operate under a glass ceiling of expectations. Supporters demand loyalty, but also results, and clubs must balance both. There's also the matter of precedent. A sanction like a 2-match ban sends a signal to other players. Certain public remarks have consequences. For a squad, clarity about standards can be stabilizing, but rigidity can be dangerous in a game that thrives on personality and diverse cultural backgrounds. Many players come from places where media relations differ. Instructing them to suppress natural expressions can feel punitive and culturally insensitive. Narrative, nuance, and the need for transparency. What the Premier League show did well was to surface the importance of nuance. Fernandez's comment about Madrid could be read as personal taste rather than intention to leave. Rosenier's ban could be read as principled leadership rather than petty punishment. Both interpretations can be true in part. Football is full of overlapping truths. Players have personal aspirations, but also contractual obligations. Managers must be firm, but also empathetic. The show's presenters urged an element that often gets lost in headlines: transparency. Clubs should be forthcoming about the reasoning behind sanctions, the processes used, and the remedial steps planned. Opacity breeds rumor. If fans and media understand that a ban was part of a broader, measured program for education, reconciliation, and public reaffirmation, the story becomes less about punishment and more about restoring harmony. Transparency doesn't mean broadcasting disciplinary meetings, but it does mean explaining outcomes and the values that informed them. A human outcome: learning, growth, and the career arc. At a player level, situations like Fernandez's are opportunities for growth. High-profile footballers are young, impressionable, and thrust into intense limelight. Mistakes or casual comments are valuable coaching moments. Media training, cultural briefings, and support networks can help players navigate their careers more wisely. Managers, too, can grow by refining how they balance discipline with mentorship. The Premier League show's most constructive notes were forward-looking. Rather than simply adjudicating right or wrong, the panel asked how clubs can build cultures where players feel supported and accountable. That includes clearer communication guidelines, better induction programs for foreign signings, and structures that allow for private reconciliation before public punishment. The idea is to make football a workplace that combines high standards with humanity. Concluding reflection: a small story that tells a bigger one. Enzo Fernandez's offhand comment about Madrid and Liam Rosenier's two-match ban might appear at first glance like a narrow media episode, but as the Premier League show demonstrated, it's emblematic of the tensions of modern football: personal ambition versus collective responsibility, the power of media narratives, and the managerial challenge of leading in a hyper-visible environment. If there's a takeaway, it is this: football needs frameworks that respect both player agency and club integrity. Managers should not be paralyzed by fear of headlines, but neither should they default to heavy-handedness for its own sake. Clubs should invest in support systems that help players